So first thing is obviously to measure out your AC unit. They're all going to be a little bit different, so you just want to make sure, and your area is going to be different. Mine is 32 inches wide, and then I think it's also then 32 inches that way. Yeah, pretty much. So you'll want to think about your area and what people are going to see. So my backyard is going to be right here behind the camera, and I got a big bay window right here. So for me, I just want to block out kind of from here on. So I don't need to bring the depth of the fence all the way back. All it needs to be is about 2.5 feet is what I'm going to do here. So 2.5 feet puts it right here, which will bring it back all the way to here. So that'd be perfectly fine. No reason to go any further back. And then same over here with this side. There's no reason to be further back. This fence is here. Nobody will ever see it from that side. So you'll just want to make sure it's wide enough just to keep it off of all the fins here on the side. So I'm going to put it at 45 inches. I said it was 32, so that gives us just over a foot to play with. Now with these AC units, you do have to remember that they need to breathe. You don't need much space, but you also want to make sure that your fence has a lot of openings in it so it can suck air in and then blow it out. You don't want to suffocate it. So the idea with this is going to be to build each wall separately and then bring them together, and then we'll bring it over here. So let's go over here and go ahead and start on wall 1. You guys can either paint yours or wait till the end. I decided to paint all the framing pieces black, and then I've got my cedar boards still up there, so those cedar boards will end up staying that color. We'll sand them down, and then I got these cut. So I'm going to go ahead and start this build with the front, the front fence. Now I didn't really go over the height, but the height over there was about 38 inches. So just to make this simple, since we were going 45 wide, I'm going to also just go 45 high. So I cut out a couple 45-inch pieces. Now we'll need, let's see, 2 for the sidewall, 2 for the other sidewall. There's 4. And then the front, we'll need 2 for the legs and 2 for the framing. So we'll end up needing 8 total of these 45 inches if you're doing it with my same measurements. So with the front framing fence, we don't want these on their side, or we don't want them laying flat. We want them up on their side. Whenever we turn it to make it the side, we'll turn this to then be able to connect like that so we can shoot these screws in. Also, I didn't paint all the way around these 2x4s. So the part that's not painted, if you end up doing it the same kind of way, the part that's not painted, you want it facing out, because once again, that side fence piece will come right here. So that'll be able to cover that up for you. All right, now to build this frame, we're just going to use our Kreg jig, and we'll shoot our 2 screws right here. So let's go get that. All right, this is the Kreg jig 720 that I use. Have your impact drill. This should be set on the 1.5 inch setting. And then we're going to do, just on the framing pieces, not the legs, we'll do 2 Kreg hole screws on each side. As a good framer, as a good carpenter, you want to do everything that involves, you know, a certain tool or certain element at the same time. So since I'm cutting out these Kreg screws for the front frame, I'm going to go ahead and grab my pieces that I've cut for the sides, and we'll go ahead and put those Kreg screws in there too, so we can go ahead and get rid of that. Got these for the side frames cut, which the sides we said are going to be 2.5 inches in depth. So these are just 2 inches, because the 3.5 inch we'll get on each side from that'll bring it up to just over 2.5 feet. So let's put the Kreg pocket holes in these too. All right, all the pocket holes cut. Okay, now back to the front framing. These going back in. The side one's non-painted surface still looking out. And then this bottom. Now really, we're going to measure up for this bottom frame. There's nothing really down there that it's covering too much, so I'm just kind of bringing it close to the bottom. We'll say we'll bring it up 6 inches. Now, I didn't bring my pencil out, so just use anything you got to mark it. I'm going to use this screw here just to make my mark lines. 6 inches again. We'll shoot our pocket screws. What I'm using here is the 2.5 inch Kreg outdoor screws. You know, because it's blue, blue's got the outdoor coating on it, so they don't rust. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the 6 inch ones down here. Want your pocket holes facing down just so they're not as visible in your project. Same for the top rail, just lining it up with the top of the legs. All right, front frame down, so we'll go ahead and do our 2 side frames before we start working on our cedar pickets. The legs of it will be the same size as the front one, 45 inches. And then our depth pieces, our connecting frame, is what's different. So these are cut at just 2 feet. Almost forgot, since our pocket holes are on the underside, we're going to be working on the back of the frame. So you want all your painted surfaces facing down. That will allow all your painting surfaces to be facing out whenever we go to install it. Go ahead and mark our legs up 6 inches just like we did on the front frame. What do I do with my drill? Oh. I don't know if I mentioned this, but these ones are laying flat on their face as opposed to up on their side like the front frame, because that'll actually give us the angles to connect it to the front frame. All right, guys, 2 side frames down. So for this portion of the video, we're going to move on to the cedar fence pickets. I'm not exactly sure how many I'm going to need for this build. I haven't calculated it out, but hopefully I can put it right here and let you know. Now, a lot of these are going to stay full size, so you don't have to do this to all of them, but I'm going to grab about 5 of them. We're going to cut these just in half. These are 5.5 inch wide fence pickets, so that means it's going to be 2 3/4 inches. For cutting this board in half, there's quite a few different options you have for how you want to do it. You could do 2 3/4 mark, 2 3/4 mark, and snap a chalk line, and then just use your circular saw. You could take this down to your table saw, cut it right in half, easy. Your speed square's got the markings here with a little pencil spot, so you can do 2 3/4. Put your sticker pencil in there, just run it forward here. Now you would have a straight line right down the middle that you could use your circular saw and go right on down. These sawhorses, they have this little indentation here. I like to use that whenever I'm doing a rip cut like this, as long as my blade's not sticking out too far. It's going to be a lot easier putting these pickets on the outside of them if we leave them separated, so we can lay them down and lay the fence pickets right across them. Now, I have had quite a bit of rain out here lately, so some of these are a little wet. This stuff, it's not going to matter too much, but after we put the fence pickets on, there will be some shrinkage as they dry out. But with those cedar fence pickets, it's not going to be a huge issue. But that is what happens. It'll soak up the water, so they're swollen now. So after you shoot them into place and everything, they're going to try to contrast, and then also the gap between them is going to widen, because then they're going to also shrink. The width shouldn't be too drastic. Usually the shrink is about an 1/8 inch, maybe just a little over that. I don't think we're going to be able to get this on these, so we'll put it straight on the ground. Now go ahead and start with your front frame, and we'll just lay out our pattern here and see if we like it or see if we need to make any adjustments. Now my idea is 1 5.5 inch picket and then 1 2 7/4 inch picket, just to give it some dimension, get some change. You'll see a lot of them where it's just the same size going all the way through, and I don't know, I don't really like that. I want to spice it up a little bit. What? You want to go inside? Now that you got it laid out go ahead and determine your angle using your speed square. Now we know we laid these out about 45 degrees, so you could actually just go ahead and go to the next step if you just want to stick to the 45 degrees. But if you want to check what your angle is, maybe you're changing it, your speed square has always got this pivot point. So that's where you always move it to then find your angle of something. So a couple different ways you could do this, but I would just put the pivot point around the edge of the board and where the 2x4 is, right where those corners meet, and then you'll just pivot it down until you're straight with that 2x4. And this comes out, I mean, it looks like I'm just a little outside of 45, but I mean, that's practically 45. So that'll end up being more like that, and that's totally fine. You've determined what angle is going to work for you. In this case, 45 degrees for me is going to work. So now the next thing I need is to figure out the spacing between them that we're going to do. So I'm just going to measure just kind of one of these that I thought looked pretty good. So we'll start at the beginning. We'll say there to there. So it looks like, try to take a little bit of an average. One was closer to 3. This one's closer to 2.5. Closer to 2.5. So for mine, at least, I'm going to do 2.5-inch spacing. We've got our two measurements now. We got our 45-degree angle we decided on, and we've decided on 2.5-inch spacing. So now instead of trying to go one board by one board, setting those two parameters up, we will make a jig, and then we'll be able to get the spacing on all these exactly right, use it for the sides, and we can blow right through this. Cut one of our spare 2x4s. Pay special attention to which way your 45s are, whether they're both 45 like this, both in, one out, one in. It looks like this is going to be one out, one in, so you just want to make sure you're going to have it one like that and one like that. That's what I mean, one in, one out, but they're going the same direction. So we're going to end up measuring the 2.5 inches here. We're going to set our circular saw at 45, and we'll make our cuts. First part of this will be setting up your circular saw. They should all have this angle changer. You go unscrew, it'll allow you to change the base. So we said we're going to stick to 45, so we just set our base up here to 45. Perfect. Go ahead and tighten it down. All right, now that you got your 45 set up, go ahead and make one cut on here, and then we'll make our measurement. Now you'll want your saw sunk pretty deep because this 45 takes a lot of depth off of it. We can do our 2.5-inch measurement. All right, and then like I said, we want to remember which way we are going with this. So it's going to be shaped like that. Now with this, you'll want to line up. So usually my circular saw lines up here on this, but with an angle cut like this, it actually adjusts it. So you'll want to visually be able to look through here and make sure you're lining it up with your line, and then see where that lines up. For mine, it's going to line up with just the inside of this. All right, our jig should be cut out. We'll go ahead and check our measurement. 2.5 right there on the dot. 2.5 right there on the dot. To get your first board set, it's a little bit hard to use this jig because this jig is designed to be between two, setting them at the same angle. So you'll just use your speed square, kind of set it up. You'll choose your own depth here. I'm not going to get too picky about it. I want this corner to breathe a little bit, so I do want that corner out. But use your speed square, put it right on, and your speed square is designed obviously at a 45 already. So you can get 145 and 145 there, and you'll just start with lining your first board up on those 45s. As for the fasteners for these fence pickets, you can use, usually I would use deck screws that are 1 5/8 inches, but I just fixed my nail gun, so I'm going to use it for this project and use these 2-inch collated outdoor nails. You can leave your fence pickets sitting there in the middle, but to reduce kind of waste with it, I'd like to use parts of these boards when it comes to doing the sides. So we'll have to scoot it out. Spare 2x4. Now let me slide these out and they not fall over. Definitely leave some overhang. We're going to do finishing cuts after, and we'll need quite a bit. So I at least leave 3 inches on both ends. All right, we got our 45-degree line. Line that up. Now we can use this jig. Just start this top board here. You're going to line it up as your 2x4. Bring in your piece here. Just keep it going for the rest of this. All right, now we can get to the fun part of actually cutting the square out with our circular saw, but we need to determine where our cuts are going to be exactly. So what we've got to remember is that the side frame is going to go right here, butted up against that. So we know the board's going to need to be wider than that. But also, the side frame is going to have fence pickets just like this on there. So then your decision is, do you want this side to come out and cover those fence pickets, or do you want these fence pickets to be able to be seen and this to be short with that? I think the easy answer is the front-facing one needs to cover up the side. That'll just make it look way more flush. So this extra 2x4 is 1.5 inches, and then 5/8 inch on the fence picket that'll be right here. So we need 2 inches and 2 1/8 inches. Measure right here. We'll go ahead and put a line down and we'll just cut it. I'm gonna use my chalk line, tape measure, pencil. You just need to measure 2 1/8 over there, 2 1/8 down here, and then we'll be able to snap our line. So I told, put your tape measure in against your wood, slide it under till you find your 2 1/8. Stick a nail or screw, whatever you got, so you can hook your chalk line to it. All right, bring your circular saw back up to 0. Now check the depth on it. We had pulled it out really far. Doesn't need to be very far to cut off these fence pickets. I'm going to go ahead and mark our top here too. Let me just do all the cuts here at once. The top doesn't matter so much. It's going to be more up to you. You can leave it flush with the 2x4. I just want to bring it up a little bit. I'm going to make it 1 inch high. Whenever cutting these lines, cut your blade just to the outside and put the inside of your blade right up to the line. We'd rather have a little bit more than too little. For the bottom here, we've got our 2x4 that runs right here, and then our cross member 2x4. So this is going to be kind of a weird cut. You have to decide. I mean, I guess you could kind of cut it right in the middle of the leg so it keeps it with this. But I'm going to set this at 1 inch just like we did the top. And I'm just going to leave it at 1 inch and we'll cut straight across, and I think that'll look just fine. Also, I got smart, if I'm smart, and got a little chair. All right, we don't want to cut into this 2x4 leg on the bottom, on the last one there. So try to set your blade as perfectly as you can for that. Perfect. right, the front frame is done. You want to think about where your sides are going to meet up. Like we've said before, this one's going to come in like that. But we don't want to then have the pickets over here like showing up right here and things. So we want to try to follow the order. So this side is going to be the opposite. So instead of running this way, we're going to run it this way. But we also want to mark out where these ones are. And you want to mark, I'm marking where the angle starts. So the corner of the board, not where the board's out on the 2x4, but where it is right here, because that's where we'll want it. Our boards are running this way instead of this way like our previous one. It's going to run the opposite. So I got all my markings. I marked them on the bottom of each of those boards. So I'm going to line up the bottom of this board with our marking. We'll worry about the exact 45 in a little bit. We just want to get the layout here. I got my big one marked, small one marked. Trying to use scraps here as best as we can. With this side, we're going to cut this where there is no hangover, so you don't have to leave too much extra over here. This side will cut an inch down to match the front, so you just want to make sure you'll be able to cover that. All right, this one will. I will measure, line up the bottom. All right, then after that, we have no markings here because this has lined us up with the front. Now these ones are just going to be our normal lines. All right, there's our lineup. So this side, once we cut it and shoot it, should match up with that side perfectly. All right, same jig as before, same fasteners. All right, same deal as the front frame. We're going to want to make sure we got this one marked at a 45. All right, now your line is just the outside of the 2x4. You're going to follow that. See how this lines up. I'm going to come off the nail gun and go ahead and go to screws. These are 2.5 inch wood screws. We're going to sink them in from the inside so that you don't see them. And try to put them at points that are behind these boards. Same thing with the other side here. Go ahead and mark all of these out. These are the markings I'm talking about. I got B for big. I got my S for small. And then the mark that matters really is this one. It's lining up with the edge of that. Same with that one. All the way down. And then this one, so I don't forget, they're going to be running this way. So we'll be coming up like that.